What's going on, everybody? Top 10 Pokemon back, bringing you your favorite Pokemon TCG series of all time, the top Pokemon card auctions of the week recap. As always, so much to go through, so much that I want to talk to you about this week. So as always, please stay tuned to the very end. I'd really appreciate it. A quick shout out to today's auction recap sponsor. It is lowpopping.com, your continued source for investment-worthy Pokemon cards. Lowpopping.com is a website that caters to serious Pokemon TCG investors like myself, where they post new inventory on the website each and every week. What I personally love about lowpopping.com is the tremendous variety they have of cards for collectors of all shapes and sizes. Numerous amounts of not only PSA graded cards, but lots of very desirable Beckett and CGC slabs as well. And yes, if you don't have the cash on hand, you can still make trades to obtain the cards that you must have for your collection. You can also sell to them and make offers. And let's not forget, they also have buy now, pay later options. So after the recap, go check out lowpopping.com. I will have the link to their website in the description of this video. Go take a look and let me know what you pick up. Alright folks, let's begin the recap. Of course, starting off with some modern cards that came by. Here we have a shiny rare Pwcc from the Scarlet and Violet Paldean Fates set, hitting a pretty impressive price this week as a PSA 10 selling for $300. And then from Shiny Treasure, we saw this Charizard EX Special Art Rare in PSA 10 sell for $262, while the English Special Illustration Rare sold for $405. Here are a couple of cards we haven't covered in a while. It's a Rainbow Rare Pikachu VMAX from Vivid Voltage, selling as a PSA 10 for $177, while the Charizard VMAX Rainbow Rare from Champion's Path still selling for a very healthy $245. And can we take a minute to appreciate the fact that there are just so many of these cards graded, especially in PSA 10, and they still go for prices like this. I mean, come on now, that's pretty impressive. Here are a couple of notable sales from the XY era. We have a Mega Heracross EX from Furious Fist in PSA 10, sold this week for $255. And then here we have the Mega Charizard EX Ultra Rare from Flashfire that sold for $1,825. From Roaring Skies, we saw this Full Art Winona in PSA 10 sell for $1,721 this week. And then here is a promo Charizard EX featuring a few more Fire-type Pokemon in the artwork as a PSA 10 sold for $502. Here is a Full Art Mewtwo EX Battle Festa promo card sold for $1,525 this week. Then here we have a BGS 10 Pristine Hex Maniac Best of XY promo card that sold for $5,400. And then we saw a couple of modern cards that had a uptake in value the past week, at least compared to what they were selling for a couple of weeks ago. Here is the Holo Charizard from Evolutions that was selling for around $1,200 not that long ago, but has since bumped up in price a bit, selling this week for $1,576, and then again for $1,703. And then we saw the Moonbreon come by, and it's real close to cracking the $1,000 mark again. I never thought I would see it come close to that, but here we are. A PSA 10 example sold this week for $949. And then getting into the vintage portion of the video, here is a very rare, at least I haven't seen it, Charizard, Charmeleon, and Charmander card. This is the number 2, or the Evolution number 2 Prism card in PSA 10, sold for $5,200 this week. And then we saw one first edition PSA 10 base set holo. It was the Poliwrath that sold for $4,383. And then we saw a bunch of the base set Charizard arts come by. Here is a CGC 10 Gem Mint Unlimited base set Charizard that sold for $2,605. And then we saw 3 autographed base set Zards, well, base set reprints. Here is one from Celebrations that was autographed by Arita and sold for $1,375. Here's the Charizard from the Pokemon TCG Classic, autographed by Arita and sold for $2,225. And then we have a Japanese 25th anniversary reprint that sold for $2,005. Here we have a CGC 10 Gem Mint Holo Charizard from Legendary Collection that sold for $2,051. And then here is a CGC 10 Base 2 Charizard that sold for $1,926. Up next, we have another authentic altered card. This is a pre-release Clefable from Jungle that sold for $255. And just like the no rarity symbol Charizard we saw last week that was altered, if they would have just left this card alone, I'm pretty sure it would have went for a lot more than $255. From first edition Fossil, we have a Gengar holo that sold for $3,463. And then we saw a bunch of PSA 10 first edition Dark Charizard holos come by. Here's one that sold for $2,753. Another one sold for $2,847. Another one here sold for $3,300. So not sure what the deal is with all these Dark Zards coming by, but it was interesting. Here is a first edition Blaine's Charizard from Gym Challenge, sold for $3,550. And then from the Neo series, we saw this first edition Typhlosion 17, sold for $2,058. Here is a BGS 9.5 first edition Lugia from Neo Genesis, sold for $4,237. We saw two Japanese Shining Gyarados, or Gyarados, come by in PSA 10. This one sold for $6,500, while this other one sold for $6,760. Here we have a Light Togetic first edition holo from Neo Destiny that sold for $1,232. A first edition Dark Tyranitar sold for $1,652. A first edition Dark Espeon in PSA 10 sold for $2,277. And then we saw this Unlimited Shining Charizard sell for $3,400 this week. We also saw a bunch of amazing holos from the E-Series. Here is a holo Butterfree from Expedition that sold for $661. The holo Pichu sold for $886. The holo Gengar sold for $807. The holo Tyranitar sold for $840. And then here from Aquapolis was this holographic Ampharos that sold for $1,431. Back to Expedition, we saw a holo Dragonite sell for $2,550. And then this beautiful Mewtwo from Expedition sold for $2,800. And then we saw a handful of Crystal Charizards come by as well. Here is the reverse holo Crystal Charizard from Skyridge that sold as a PSA 10 for $2,905, and then again for $3,056. And this is a card that sold not even 2 years ago for about $5,520. So saw a bit of a dip in value there. And then we saw the Japanese Crystal Charizard, this is the first edition copy in PSA 10, sell for $9,726. Getting into the EX era, we have this Lapras EX from Ruby and Sapphire. Definitely an awesome looking Lapras. Sold as a PSA 10 for $510. And then from Team Magma versus Team Aqua was this Swampert EX, sold for $630. Here we have a CGC 10 Pristine Mewtwo EX from Ruby and Sapphire that sold for $1,225, along with this Gardevoir EX from Dragon Frontiers that sold for $2,125. Up next, a couple of Gold Stars. Here is a PSA 8 Gold Star Umbreon from the Pop Series 5, sold for $3,938, and then a PSA 8 Gold Star Rayquaza that sold for $4,900 this week. And then we saw a couple of Japanese Gold Stars in PSA 10. Here is a Kyogre, sold for $1,457. The Gold Star Groudon sold for $1,700. And the Gold Star Gyarados sold for $2,382 this week. And we can't forget about this PSA 10 Gold Star Charizard from EX Dragon Frontiers, selling this week for $17,301. And then lastly, for our graded cards on eBay was this Kyogre holo from Call of Legends that sold for $1,500 as a PSA 10. A couple of pieces of sealed product. Here we have an Evolving Skies booster box. These boxes have been consistently selling for over $500. Here's one that sold for $520 this week. Here we saw an EX Ruby and Sapphire booster box sell for $9,700. And then check this out, folks. This was very interesting. This was a piece of sealed product from way back in the day that used to sell for $19.99. Woo! Could you imagine getting this right here for 20 bucks. It is a collection of sealed booster packs and theme decks. Here you have a jungle theme deck, a couple of expedition booster packs. I see a Neo Discovery booster pack, an Aquapolis pack. You got some stickers up there. You got an Echo theme deck. I'm not sure what that is on the right there. Maybe a book. I'm not sure. But this little piece of vintage history sold for $3,476 this week. And this is something I have never seen before. On to the Pwcc weekly auction block, we have this Japanese holographic Mew as a CGC-10 Perfect. Sell for $1,200 this week. This is a Pop 1 card as far as CGC-10 Perfects go. Here we have an error electrode from Jungle. It's a misaligned print error in CGC7 that sold for $1,710. And if you want an up-close shot of what's going on here, you can see the holo is a bit shifted there, misaligned, if you will. So that's a very interesting error card. Here we have a CGC10 Pristine Lily full art card from Ultra Prism, selling for $2,760. This is a Pop 8 card. Here we have a Japanese PSA 10 Shining Mew that sold for $3,240, while the CGC10 Pristine example sold for $5,160. We saw one of the corporate history cards come by. It was the Mewtwo EX. Got a PSA 10 and sold for $8,400 this week. And then here, folks, I thought this was very interesting. It is a BGS 9.5 Unlimited Base Set Charizard that sold for $4,200. And when I first saw that, I was like, wow, it's pretty expensive. But when you take a look at the subgrades for this card, it's pretty strong. You have 110 and the rest are 9.5, so it looks to be a very strong example, which is probably why it went for as much as it did. And then finally, we have 3 of these Pokemon Scramble cards. These are Japanese exclusive cards in PSA 10. Well, 2 of them are in PSA 10. Here's one that sold for $8,100. Here is a Krogunk in PSA 10 that sold for $9,300. And then lastly, we have a PSA 9 Eevee Pokemon Scramble card that sold for $18,000. That's the end of the recap, folks. I hope you enjoyed. Leave a comment below, and don't forget to go check out lowpopping.com. I would greatly appreciate it. That's all I got today, folks. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you all in my next one.